is Lars Amreus, and he's new to us in his role as Director General of the Swedish Maritime and Transport Museums. But Lars and I, we go back, way back to 2006, when he was the Director General of the Swedish History Museums. And Lars has been in his current post since April 2021, so he's quite new there. And between being at the Swedish National Historical Museums, he was also Director General of the Swedish National Heritage Board for almost 10 years. He is here to talk about Vrak, together with Anna Arnberg, who we already heard yesterday talk about the refugee boats. And Anna has been part of this. If I understand this correctly, you have been part of the Vrak project from the start almost. So this is a joint effort for Anna and Lars. You can both step up.
Good morning, everyone. You don't have to look so scared. I'm not going to make you do squats this morning. You're off this time. So, Hannah, great seeing you again. You're right. It was 2006 we saw each other the first time. It's great to be back, and truly, I must say it's a singular honor and a pleasure to be here in this together with all of you. I appreciate the very open and friendly atmosphere in this room and in this network, and it's constructive and also, to be honest, I'm a little bit shell-shocked by the amount of experience and knowledge that is gathered here in this room. So it is indeed a true pleasure to be here. Now, when I was invited to speak about Vrak here, I was a little bit reluctant at first, I must admit, because, as Hannah said, I've only been on my posting for about a year and a half now, and Vrak is a project that has been going on for many years, of course, and has many dimensions. I was also reluctant, of course, because I cannot be at all credited for this achievement, because when I came in, everything was already settled, and there was just the final phase of the program. And I would like to send a thought to my predecessor, Leif Grundberg, whom I know many of you have met, not least in Stockholm 2019, when he was hosting the meeting. And I hope Leif is with us now, so I will give him a greeting. Hej Leif, jag hoppas att du ser det här och att du njuter av det färdiga resultatet. Så får vi ses lite längre fram sen. Leif had the bravery and the visionary to actually initialize this project and to see it through, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. Well, I was still reluctant, but then I talked to Anna, and Anna agreed to join me for this presentation. And as Hannah said, Anna has been with this project almost from the start, so it feels very good to have you here, Anna, and we'll do this together. So Anna primarily and myself will sort of take you through the process of creating Vrak, the Museum of Wrecks, that opened in almost exactly 1 year ago. It opened on the 23rd of September 2021. And as you know, this has been very strange and very turbulent year with the pandemic, with the war in Europe, and so on. So I would say that it's still a lot of work in progress, but we'll try to reflect a little bit about the first year of Vrak, Museum of Wrecks. I know some of you have seen or taken part in presentations that have been held previously, like in Stockholm 2019, for instance. So this will actually be the opportunity to see what actually happened and see what we actually ended up with so far, I should say, with Vrak, because Vrak is an ongoing undertaking. We're still trying, to understand the audience. We're still trying to develop this whole concept of Vrak, the Museum of Wrecks. But first, I'd just like to give you a quick overview, quick idea of the kind of context that Vrak is situated in. It is a part of the Swedish National Maritime and Transport Museums. We have now 5 museums. The Vasa Museum, the National Maritime Museum, the Naval Museum. We also do, since 2018, we are also responsible for the National Railway Museum. And we do have a big collection of civil aviation as well. We have about 50 aircraft from the earliest times up until modern times, and a lot of objects to go with that. And we do also have a big collection of roadworking equipment, steamrollers and stuff like that. Large collection of leisure boats, for instance. So we have a very wide scope of what we do at the organization. And we are a government institution, a national government agency, funded approximately half by the government and half by our own revenues in different ways. We do have a vision, like I would imagine most of you do too. We want to broaden people's worldview through knowledge and experience, to broaden or to widen. And isn't that a great thing for a maritime organization to do, to try to widen the horizon? And I think that it's in this context that Vrak, Museum of Wreck, comes into play, because there is so much to discover at the bottom of the ocean that ordinary people without a license to dive can really never, ever get close to. So I think that was very much the starting point of Vrak, Museum of Wrecks, to be able to bring this heritage, bring all this fantastic knowledge and experience to the surface in order to widen the horizon, or should I say, perhaps in this context, also deepening the horizon, going to the bottom of the sea. Vrak is primarily about the Baltics, and I think I'll leave to you, Anna, to explain a little bit about the background.
An important starting point when we were thinking about this museum was that it was not just going to be about remains in Swedish waters, but that it should depict the history of an entire region, the Baltic region, as reflected by the remains lying on the seabed. On the seabed of the Baltic Sea, there are tens of thousands, perhaps even 100,000 wrecks and other remains. The Baltic Sea has, for a very long time, been one of the world's busiest seas. And the remains, the unique condition with the brackish water, the cold, the darkness, the low oxygen content, has enabled organic materials to be preserved in almost perfect condition. And thanks to this history and this environment, the Baltic Sea contains a unique variety of well-preserved ships and other remains, many of them as well preserved as the ship Vasa that you're all familiar with. But despite this uniqueness, as Lars said, there are very few people who know about this cultural heritage, and even fewer who have had the possibility to access it and go down to see this underwater world. in recent years, there has also been a lot of development in different kinds of technology and research. And this has given us the opportunity to work with this cultural heritage in new ways. This technology has enabled us to show and take people down to these remains without actually taking them under the water. And this is one of the things that we hope to be able to drive from when we started and work with this museum, to use this technology to broaden people's worldview, or deepen, as Lars said. In this presentation, we think we're going to start, we have already started, to give you a short background to the project. We also, as Lars said, are going to show some pictures from the exhibitions, because they are now finished and you can visit them. And we're also going to say some things about the first year with an open museum and what we are right now, and also a little bit of where we're heading. But first, we're going to show you a film where some of our colleagues can give you a short background to this project. And this film was created, I don't know if it was in 2018 or 19, but in the beginning of the project. So it gives you a bit of insight on where we were in those days and what kind of museum we were aiming for when we started creating it. The film is in Swedish, but it's subtitled in English, so hopefully you will keep up.
Visst finns det museer som berättar om vrak och marinarkeologi, men inte någon som spänner över hela Östersjön.
Marinarkeologin är fortfarande ganska ett ungt ämne, men har otroligt mycket mer att ge. Vi har liksom bara sett lite toppen på ett isberg.
Det händer väldigt mycket nytt hela tiden. Både genom marinarkeologiska undersökningar, men också den forskning som bedrivs.
Det finns otroligt mycket att berätta om alla möjliga aspekter av mänskligheten.
Det behövs en kraft för marinarkeologin i Sverige som ingen annan kan vara just nu.
På Djurgården i Stockholm, intill det världsberömda Vasamuseet, öppnar ett nytt museum, Vrak, Museum of Wrecks. Museet ska rymma historier från hela Östersjön. Ett hav med 10 000 år av mänsklig aktivitet. Och så mycket som 100 000 vrak och lämningar. Museet kommer särskilt lyfta marinarkeologernas arbete, där upptäckten av skeppet Vasa på 1960-talet var startskottet för forskningsfältet. Dykardräkterna har sedan dess inte bara blivit lättare. Teknikerna för arkeologiska undersökningar under vatten har förbättrats avsevärt och nya upptäckter görs ständigt.
Allt det där nya spännande som vi inte har utrymme för i Vasamuseet, det kan vi visa i det här museet.
I museet, som byggs av Statens Maritima och Transporthistoriska museer, ska historier från ett helt hav rymmas i ett litet hus. Det ställer särskilda krav på utställningarna.
Genom utställningarna så vill vi ta med besökaren ner till Östersjöns botten. Vi vill få besökaren att uppleva Östersjön på så många sätt som möjligt och möta de här vraken, möta människorna som befann sig på fartygen när de förliste. Vi vill att besökarna själva ska få känna på eller prova på hur det är att vara marinarkeolog.
Vraken i Östersjön är som tidskapslar som berättar om människorna och den tid då vraket sjönk. I Östersjön är bottnarna syrefattiga och vattnet är kallt och bräckt. Här finns inte heller skeppsmask som på andra håll i världen äter upp trälämningar. Det gör att vrak bevaras ytterst bra. Det ger unika möjligheter att bedriva fältarbete och forskning.
Det kulturarv som finns på Östersjöns botten, det är inte bara unikt. Det säger också väldigt mycket viktiga saker om vår historia. Och det finns en stor källa både till upplevelser men också till kunskap om historien kring Östersjön och hur saker och ting har varit under olika tider.
Det finns idag ett stort nätverk mellan forskare och institutioner i de olika länderna kring Östersjön. Vrak, Museum of Wrecks, kan här bli ett nav för forskningssamarbeten och kommer kunna berätta om de ständigt nya upptäckterna.
det finns ju stor potential att kunna hitta fortfarande riktigt häftiga ballavrak. Det är inte bara Vasa och de här skråvela som redan är kända, utan det kommer faktiskt nya fantastiska fynd varje år. Både forskningen och den här exploateringsarkeologin som vi bedriver ser jag som är enormt viktig för att kunna berätta historier om inte bara Sveriges utveckling utan framförallt Östersjöns utveckling här med alla länder runt omkring.
Vrak och lämningar mår bäst av att lämnas kvar på bottnen, så endast enstaka föremål kommer att bärgas och ställas ut. Istället satsar museet på berättande och ny teknik.
Vi kan ju tyvärr inte visa alla vrak. Det finns ju uppåt 100 000 vrak i Östersjön. Så vi väljer ut några som har hamnat där av olika orsaker och under olika tidsepoker. Vi talar lite om att vi lyfter upp vraket. Vi gör ju inte det bokstavligen. Men vi lyfter upp berättelsen om vraket och några av föremålen.
Det som är spännande, det är ju att föremålen i väldigt stor utsträckning ligger kvar nere på havets botten. Men här har vi också möjligheten genom ny teknik som ju kanske först nu möjliggör för oss att levandegöra den historia som utställningen presenterar, de föremål som finns, på ett sätt som tar besökaren väldigt nära både fynden och människorna som finns bakom.
As said, an important starting point for us was that this museum should depict the history of an entire region, and that we were going to do so through underwater cultural heritage and innovative solutions and technology. This is a cultural heritage common to about 90 million people in countries around the Baltic Sea. By extension, this also means that maritime archaeology, and not just the maritime archaeology carried out at our institutions, but also by colleagues in different countries around the sea, form a vital part of this museum and its scope. Because of this, cross-border collaboration and knowledge exchange are highly vital for us to do this museum, both creating it, but also now when it's open to have an active dialogue and surrounding these remains, and also to keep up with the research and be able to update our knowledge and exhibitions over time. This is also something we will get back to a little bit further on. The cultural heritage is, as already mentioned, outstanding even in a global comparison. It harbors everything from submerged Stone Age settlements to shipwrecks from centuries with intense contact or conflict. The cultural heritage is unique, which combined with these unique preserving conditions of the Baltic Sea gives us as a museum a unique possibility to work with this cultural heritage. The museum's business approach is to have a holistic approach to this cultural heritage, and this is done through, as I said, through close collaborations with actors in all affected countries, both authorities and academia, but also actors within the private sector. As part of this museum process, as we recognized that we couldn't do this on our own, we needed our colleagues to be with us on this. We formed an advisory board with focus on maritime archaeology and underwater cultural heritage of the Baltic Sea. This network has functioned like what you say, an advisor to the museum during the project while we have been building this museum. But now when it's finished, we also like this advisory board to be part of the museum and be part of future research and projects connected to this museum, so that we together can create new knowledge and be current in our communication with the public. And in this context, I also want to mention research. and different projects carried out at our museum, but also in collaboration with other parties or at other institutions, as they all form a very important part from this museum, and it's also one of the backgrounds for us actually being able to make this museum all this interesting research that has been going on for a long time. Now I think we're going to go to the exhibitions. Do you have something you want to say first, or should I continue? I continue. I think we are going to tell you a little bit about the background and the building of the exhibitions, and then we're going to go through them, and we're going to show them what they looked like. This creation process was quite complicated. It was probably complicated because it's difficult to open a new museum, a lot of different professions and things that were going into this. But it was also quite complicated by the pandemic situation, not least because this was an international project. It was initiated by our museum, but we also worked, when we worked creating the exhibition, we worked with a Swedish company called Expology, who designed and produced the exhibitions, but also a Dutch company, Bruns, who built them. And much of these exhibitions were actually built in the Netherlands and then transported to our museum and set up there. And when we planned all this, it was before the pandemic situation, we were planning for a situation where we could have close contact, we could meet, we could discuss different things. But as it turned out, that wasn't possible. So we have done a lot of things digitally. For a long time, there were restrictions to visit each other's countries, but when it opened and we could go, or that Bruns could go to Sweden, they traveled and worked, and then it was closed again, and so on. But finally, we made it. Now it's time for another film. This time it's Ron from Bruns who will give you an insight in just the building process and from his perspective.
We are building, mainly we are building 4 rooms. One room where you go under the sea, where that you experience what a diver experiences when he's diving down. It's quite an immersive room. The next room is basically the team is treasures from a famous wreck in the Baltic Sea. So there are showcases hanging about a big printed carpet where you can see on the spots where they actually found it an interesting piece. You see a 3D animation, like a hologram. And then on the top floor where we are right now, we have one room with 6 famous wrecks in the Baltic Sea, like the Anna Maria and the Estonia. And the last room is more like a room where you learn something about how researcher works when working with wrecks. One big obstacle is the current situation in the world, COVID, but we managed so far to mostly work around it. So we did a lot remotely. Normally we have more face-to-face physical contact because that's good for a creative process. And doing that creative process on the screen is more challenging. I learned a lot about the Baltic Sea. At school in our country, the Baltic Sea is a region that is not very highlighted. And especially the wrecks in the Baltic Sea, it was interesting to find out that there is a relation with the Netherlands, especially in the earlier wrecks, like 16, 17, 1800. There was a lot of trading going on between Netherlands and countries at the Baltic Sea. I'm Ron de Mikkelaar. I'm from the company called Bruns from the Netherlands. I'm here at the Museum Vrak to supervise the installation of a beautiful new project. That's it.
All in all, this museum contains 5 exhibitions set on 2 floors. As you see, the exhibitions are about 900 square meters, so it's quite a small museum we're working with. When the visitor entered the first exhibition, called the Sea of Memories, they arrive in the thought is that they're going to arrive in an immersive underwater adventure designed to prepare them for the forthcoming exhibition experience. Through an immersive film and the voice of the Baltic Sea, the visitors are introduced to the museum and its topics. And the Baltic Sea takes us from the earliest time, from the Stone Age, all the way to today. And we can hear the story in quite a poetic way, but from the sea's own perspective. Some pictures. And we start, this was the right British, we stop with today and with the exploring of the Baltic Sea as maritime archaeologists and what that knowledge that can give us. When the film ends and all rooms are lit up, authentic artifacts themed in 4 groups are displayed behind this mesh that the film is projected on. You can see probably better this way. This was during the construction of these exhibitions. And most of the objects here are from the collection at, not that from this museum, but from other museums within our museum agency. And these these objects are themed in like 4 clusters. The first we call Living by the Sea, the second War and Control, Trade and Contact, and then the last called The Bottomless Pit, as a way of showing how people over time, and not least us today, have been using the Baltic Sea to just actually get rid of things. These objects are from a dive event outside the museum organized by sports divers in 2019 with the aim to clear the bottom from environmentally hazard materials, a lot of batteries and so on. We as a museum, we didn't organize this event, but we're part of it. And one of our things was that we were going to collect these objects to be able to incorporate them in this exhibition as a way of also being able to work with and communicate this story. Now we go to the second exhibition in the museum. It's called Resande Man. This is a ship that sank in 1660 in the Stockholm archipelago on its way to a diplomatic mission to Poland. The wreck still lies in situ on the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and very few objects has been lifted. One of them, a coin, was lifted when this wreck was found in 2012 as a way to see that this was really the ship Resande Man, as you could date the coin. And this coin is exhibited in this exhibition as the only physical object. An important thing for us when we were creating this exhibition was to find a way how we could work with in situ preservation the same time as we were building an exhibition. And it was also important for us to find ways how we, as I'm an archaeologist and I work very closely to our, even though I don't dive myself, I work very closely with our maritime archaeologists to find a way for them to be able to work together with the curators in creating this exhibition. And we worked a lot with photogrammetry as well as film and photography. And this is a photography from the site, Resande Man. In this exhibition, we have worked a lot also trying to create an immersive experience, and here we have worked a lot in scale 1:1. The wreck is depicted as a photo along the one wall, and we also work with this carpet you see on the floor. This the carpet is based on the 3D model, and it's very detailed, and as you go along on the floor, you can see the objects that are still on the wreck site, and you can actually walk over them. In some cases, we have also chosen to work with a digital salvage, making 3D models of different objects who were then transformed into point clouds or Pepper's Ghost animations. And these, I don't know, you see the display cases are placed exactly at the point where this object are still on the wreck site. The design here plays with the idea of a traditional museum with this display cases, making the most of the fact that these objects are still on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. As I said, we also worked a lot with video. These are video recordings from the wreck site. So when you get closer to the showcases, these Pepper's Ghosts dissolve, and instead you are looking at a video from the site. Now we're going up in the museum to the second floor, and now we're standing outside an exhibition that we called Our Shared Sea, based on different remains from different times in different parts of the Baltic Sea. And in this exhibition, there are no remains from Swedish water, as we had that in Resandeman, but from other parts of the Baltic Sea. Here we start about 7,000 years ago at a Stone Age site called Tybrinvig in today's Denmark, and we stop in 1994 in the middle of the Baltic Sea with the sinking of the ship Estonia. And the individual sites in this exhibition, there are 6 different ones, has been chosen to be able to work with and explain the long and interlinked history of the Baltic Sea and the Baltic Sea countries. The stories depart from the remains on the bottom of the Baltic Sea and their materiality, but also comprise large-scale historical events as well as individual life stories. The objects on these slides are from the Swedish warship Solen, that sank outside Gdansk in 1627 and are on loan from, I don't see Robert, but from his museum in Gdansk, so we have a lot of contact with them when creating this exhibition. We have also like to work a lot with interactivities as a way of trying to communicate with our visitors in an entertaining and educational way. And in this case, to give a background to why the ship Solen were in Gdansk and why it sank. And what you can see here are members of the Swedish and the Polish royal family, and the tale is about their contacts, conflicts, and feuds. The fact that none of these remains are in Swedish waters has, as a result, promoted international cooperation as part of the work process. And as I earlier said, this has been a very important way for us to work, both when we're creating the museum, but not least now when we have the museum, because we still have contacts with the people and the researchers who have loaned out objects or who have done research before. And in this case with Solen, there's also great because they are working with this remain, so when they come up with something new, we can also incorporate that in our museum. The last exhibition I'm going to tell you about is an exhibition that focuses on maritime archaeology that we call the assignment. And this describes maritime archaeology in Sweden today and how knowledge is created. And for us, this has also been an important part, since this also gives insight to why we can say the things we say in the other exhibitions in the museum. This exhibition also includes a game where the visitors themselves can become maritime archaeologists and complete a maritime archaeology assignment one step at a time. Game-based learning in combination with more classical elements here creates a multi-generational form of learning where we hope that children and adults can find out things and learn together as they go along in this exhibition. And here we also work with different steps from the field work through the collections and also into the archives. And this is part of the exhibition where you have this interactivity or game in the archives. All from planning to execution, sustainability has been an integrated part of how we have like to work with this museum and exhibition process. When Vasa was discovered in 1956, the natural choice, as I think Matthew were discussing also earlier, was to lift it and show it in a museum. But today, 60 years later, when we were planning a new museum, we had knowledge about how much work it actually takes to keep a vessel as a museum object, but also, as I said earlier, the techniques are much different. So we have all different possibilities to do this museum in other ways. So instead of lifting things, we were trying to work with digital methods as far as possible, leaving the remains on the seafloor for people, divers, researchers, and so on, to be able to discover and explore also in the future. And we also have not been creating a collection for this museum by itself. We have the collections of our other museums, but a great part, as I also told you, has been to loan objects from other museums using their collection also as a way to work with sustainability. Do you want to say something?
All right, I can use this mic. Well, like we've touched upon, the fact that we need to work sustainably is hugely important to us in the whole agency. And as important as the venue itself is, we have to think with the whole visitor experience, including the cafe, the shop, the activities, the digital offer. So we need to think sustainably. And at our organization, we've been working with this for a long time. We are using the environment management standard ISO 14001 to work systematically. We've been doing so for, I think, almost 10 years now, and we're also part of a bigger group of museums and attractions and restaurants and cafes in the island of Djurgården, and we all work together, about 60 different organizations, private and public ones, work very hard together in order to make Djurgården the most sustainable tourist destination in the world. So we really set the bar high, and we really need to take our responsibility in order to make this happen. Yeah, moving on. Well, we go back to the opening of the museum, the 23rd of September last year, and that was, of course, the starting point of the journey of Vrak. And as I said at the outset, it's been a turbulent year, as you all know, with the starting with the pandemic, just trying to get the museum to open during the pandemic was a challenge, and we were lucky then. But then, of course, running the museum the first year with pandemic and with ups and downs has been certainly a big challenge.
One of the important things for us as an open museum has also been trying to create a meeting point for, as I said, for researchers, a meeting point for maritime archaeologists, a meeting point for different stakeholders around the Baltic Sea, a meeting point for visitors and profession, but also a meeting point for visitors, and not least a meeting point for the museum and school children. At the moment, we are working very much with how to work with schools in such a small museum. We, as you see in this picture, have school groups in the museum, but an important part has also been creating like more online curriculums that a teacher can work with. And this is an important part, one side because we're a small museum, but also because we're a national museum and we work or should work in all of the country, and this museum is in Stockholm. When we think about this museum, it's also very much in terms of an eye-opener. Through this museum, whether online or on site, we want people to understand the valuable source of knowledge and experience the Baltic Sea is, but also to inform about the multiple threats to this cultural heritage. It's a very large, it's an important, but it's also a fragile heritage. And it's threatened by things like looting, trawling, uncareful diving, and not least by that people don't know about it. And what you don't know about, why should you want to protect it? So that's one of the things we're working with, just to open people's eyes in different ways. I think we're going to skip that one, as I already said, most of it. As Lars said, we're also, there are many challenges when you open a new museum. The museum isn't known. We have worked with the pandemic for a great part of this year, but also this, as I said, is a small museum. We don't have any designated areas for temporary exhibitions, so we have to work with other things to get people to come back to us, to be able to be this meeting point that we want to be. And these are not activities that we have tried out yet, but that we are thinking of and are preparing ourselves for. And it can be everything from like shutting down the light in the museum and doing flashlight guiding with kids during school holidays, or kayak divings outside the museum, because just on our doorsteps there are numerous wrecks that you could explore in different ways. But we also are working with, sorry, I have not that one on, trying to live stream dives from the bottom of the Baltic Sea, so you can go down in real time with our divers, asking them questions and really be on the site when they're on the site. And this is a thing that we are exploring right now, and the theme for the next short film, the last short film that we're going to show you before we stop.
Fate held the opposite.
Idag är vi ute med det här fartyget Öfararen och vi ska göra ett live-dyk på Osmenvraket då. Så tanken är att vi ska ta oss ner på vraket och göra en guidad tur helt enkelt ner på botten. Och idag har ju extra spännande besökare också. Vi har ju kronprinsessan här med oss ombord.
Vi har en maxtid här på 30 minuter idag. Jag håller koll så att de inte överskrider den. Sen har jag kommunikation med Jim som dyker tillsammans med Patrik, så att uppstår problem så kan Jim och jag prata här i mikrofonen. Men huvudsyftet idag med kommunikationen och videon här, det är att kronprinsessan ska kunna följa dyket live på skärmen se vraket live, prata med Jim, ställa frågor under dyket. Så att mikrofonen här kommer kronprinsessan och jag använda under dyket.
Vi lämnar ytan.
Går det bra?
Ja, det går jättebra, men jag hör dig lite lågt.
Hör du mig bättre nu?
Ja, det är.
Ja, jag får prata lite högre då.
Ja, det är bra. Vad sa du?
Ja, vi ser Patrik nu. Det ser bra ut.
Repetera.
Det ser bra ut.
Ja, jättebra.
Det går ju till så att dykarna har ju en kamera fäst på sin hjälm, kamera och ljus, kopplat till en kabel som går upp till ytan till den här lådan helt enkelt, tekniklådan som tar hand om det. I förlängningen då ska man kunna ha det här som en programpunkt till exempel, där man pratar, har en dialog från museet eller från där jag sitter. Du ska kunna sitta hemma vid din dator och prata med dykarna helt enkelt, när de dyker live.
Det är jättebra. Det är en fantastisk skärpa i bilderna.
Ja, vad härligt. Jag tog på mig stödkragen på huvudet. Jag håller väldigt stilla här.
Det som är kul med den här tekniken, alltså tekniken i sig har ju funnits, men just det här konceptet att med Vrak då, som är ett helt nytt typ av museum där vi har digitala metoder där vi visar vad som finns på botten. Nu kan vi faktiskt visa vraken på riktigt med den här metoden, att vi kan ta ner besökarna och få följa med oss ner egentligen. Och samtidigt finns det en möjlighet för besökarna som tittar då att kunna ställa frågor, så att det ska bli ruskigt spännande att se om det här funkar på det sättet som vi hoppas, och framförallt responsen på dagens gäster också. Det ska bli otroligt kul.
Helt fantastiskt.
Var det?
Alltså det var så tydligt och klart. Hej Patrik! Woo!
Bravo!
Det här jubel brukar man aldrig få.
Nej, strålande.
Man brukar bara få själv när man kommer upp. Normalt.
Det var helt magiskt alltså.
These are actually the same numbers as on this one. And I'm going to...
Just some brief comments on the first year on the when it comes to the visitors and the visitor experience and so on. Vrak is supposed to carry its own costs, so we had a budget. You know, we need around 100,000 paying visitors for Vrak to break even. And as I said, you know, this has been a strange and turbulent year. Up until the last of August now, we've had a bit more than 50,000 visitors. So we're not on target, but we had a really, really good summer with 60% of the visitors coming during the summer. Of course, in the early part of 2022, Sweden never had a really hard lockdown, but we had recommendations from the government. And being Swedish, most of us are actually following those recommendations. So we had very few visitors early on in the year, but it's picked up during the summer. And a lot of that is thanks to the fact that we introduced a combined ticket, so you could buy a ticket to Vasa and Vrak with a certain discount, and I think we've sold about 20,000 of those, which is very promising, I think, for the future. And when it comes to visitor experience, of course, we've made service and so on, and I think we have around 90% of our visitors are satisfied or very satisfied. So I think we're doing pretty good there. But there's still a lot more work to do. I would say that we still haven't really understood our audience. They're not quite what we expected at the outset. We expected more visitors, more guests from Finland perhaps, and the Baltic countries. They haven't showed up to the extent that we hoped for, but we've had visitors from further away coming to Vrak. So we need to keep on working to understand our audience, and we need to also continue developing Vrak as a hub a meeting point and as an experience for not least school children. We only just started with the school programs this spring, actually. So Vrak, I'm very happy that Vrak is there and it's open and it's operational, but this is only the starting point. There is so much more to be done. What is sista bilden? That was the last slide, so Hanna, thank you.
Thank you. What we will do is try to have one quick question, if we have one. Yes. From Norway.
Norway. Yes, Per Seebeck from Vrak Maritime Museum in Norway. Thank you very much, a very interesting presentation. Maritime archaeology is also a very important part of our museum. We cover most of the western part of Norway. I was just wondering themes and topics in your museum. How old do the wrecks have to be in the focus of your museum? And would you deal with wrecks, for example, like the Estonia? And how do you deal with other wrecks that are also grave sites?
We have talked a lot about maritime archaeology, but I also said like the cultural heritage of the Baltic Sea. For me, or for us as a museum, it's important that we don't just work with maritime archaeology, we work with the cultural heritage, and we work from the earliest time until today. So we also have Estonia in the museum, and that's also like an important thing for us to have, I think, just as one point to reflect that things that happened earlier were also tragedies, but also like this is an ongoing discussions, and the people affected in Sweden, different kinds of the Baltic Sea, and this is a part where we as a museum, hopefully in the future, can be a meeting point for different people. People want to go to museum, but also people who we can have like meetings or just discuss some things, and opening the museum for that.
Thank you. That was also a very good question, I think. Well, thank you. We might have some more time for more questions later on. But for now, I think I want to get the program going. We've been doing everything at quite a lot of speed here over the week, so I want to keep the momentum going.